Hello friends, hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to the third lecture of the series that I have started recently, that is MEG 7 Indian Writing in English. In today's session we are going to discuss a very good piece of literature, a particular novel by Mulk Raj Anand, Untouchable, that was published in 1935. This novel in itself is very important from examination perspective as well, because it is included in the syllabus of MEG 7, and this exam is going to be held very shortly on 27th August 2021. So without any further ado, let's start with the video. So before we discuss the plot summary of the novel, let us know a little bit about Mulk Raj Anand, and whatever I'm going to discuss here will be important from the examination perspective. You don't need to remember when was the author born or when he died. Basically, Mulk Raj Anand was an Indian writer in English, notable for his depiction of the lives of the poorer castes in traditional Indian society. Okay, so he was also one of the pioneers of Anglo-Indian fiction. Now, you might remember that in the previous two lectures, in lecture 1 and lecture 2, I have covered two most prominent Indian writers and poets, that was Henry Louis Vivian D'Alessio and Toru Dutt. Both were very good in their own ways, but Mulk Raj Anand, along with R.K. Narayan, Ahmad Ali, and Raja Rao, was one of the first Indian based writers in English to gain an international readership. Now, we have already understood that Mulk Raj Anand's writing inclination was towards the poorer caste. He used to reflect in his novels or his literature, and he used to try to depict the poor scenario, the underprivileged sections of our society. So let us quickly see what are his major accomplishments. He became known for his protest novel Untouchable, which was published in 1935, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, following by other works on the Indian poor such as Coolie, which was published in the consecutive year 1936, and Two Leaves and a Bud in 1937. Alright, so he is also noted for being among the first writers to incorporate Punjabi and Hindustani idioms into English. And this is one of the most important fact about Mulk Raj Anand, that he has received the Indian civilian honor of Padma Bhushan. All right. Now let us check out quickly the character list, the characters of the novel Untouchable. Actually, there are a lot of characters here, but I will just discuss and I'll tell you about the major characters. Obviously, the protagonist of this novel is Bakha. You have to remember this name, very important, and he was the son of Lakha. Alright, as you can see in the character map in your screen itself, then there was a friend of Bakha, that is Chota, and Ramcharan, he was also a friend of Bakha. Then we have Lakha, the father of Bakha, and he was the Jamadar of the sweepers. Okay, basically the head of the sweeper community. Then we have Rakha. Rakha was the Bakha's younger brother, and we have Sohini. Sohini is the Bakha's younger sister. Alright, then we have Havildar Charat Singh. I'll discuss about him. He is also a very prominent character of the novel. So you just, as of now, just remember the names, very important. And then we have Gulabo. Gulabo is obviously Ramcharan's mother. And we have a negative character, a couple of negative characters that we can say that there are some antagonists in the novel as well. And one of the major antagonists is Pandit Kalinath. Alright. Then we have Ramcharan's sister. It's not very important from examination perspective and the novel's perspective as well. And two more English characters here are Colonel Hutchinson and his wife Mary Hutchinson. Then by the end of this novel, we have three more characters that has been shown here, like Mahatma Gandhi, and we have Iqbal and R.N. Bashir. Alright, so these are some of the major characters that we are going to discuss in the novel primarily. And let's get started with the novel then. So the inspiration behind this novel Untouchable by Mulk Raj Anand was from his aunt. The book was inspired by his aunt's experience when she had a meal with a Muslim woman and was treated as an outcast by her family. You have to understand one thing, that the time when Mulk Raj Anand wrote this particular novel, back at that time, the society was pretty much divided, and there was a lot of social norms that the people used to follow back then, and they were quite serious about those, and obviously those are counted as the social evils as of now. And if you see our modern India as of now, we have evolved way ahead of what we used to be back then. So this is, we're talking about the 20th century, okay, the mid 20th century. Okay, so coming back to the novel, the plot of this book, Anand's first revolves around the argument for eradicating the caste system. It depicts a day in the life of Baka, a young sweeper who is untouchable due to his work of cleaning latrines. Alright, so this entire novel will just revolve around a particular person, basically a person. The protagonist, main protagonist of our novel is Baka, who is a very young sweeper of age 18, and he is basically untouchable, and he is a sweeper by profession, and he used to work with his father of cleaning latrines. All right. So the novel Untouchable revolves around a place, and it is set in the North Indian cantonment town Bulasha. All right, you have to remember the name of this place, very important again. So as I have said previously, this entire story will revolve around a person who's known as Baka. Alright, so Baka is a very young Indian sweeper of age 18, and he is the son of Lakha. Lakha happens to be the head of Balusha sweepers. Okay, and Baka here is intelligent but naive, humble yet vain. Alright. Now, by the end of the novel, we'll understand and we'll try to figure out that what Mulk Anand is trying to portray here. Basically, he's trying to showcase the, the condition of the minorities. We will not say minorities here. We will say rather the outcasts of the society. And again, saying the outcasts of the society will also challenge few things here. Basically, the tempered societal norms that we used to have back then, and how we used to have this we used to treat this untouchability in a very serious manner, in an inhuman manner. Okay, it was an unjust system of oppression that we used to have back then, and it was one of the social evil that even the Britishers despised. Okay, so that is one of the good thing about the British. It's obviously quite obvious that the Britishers did a lot of harm to our Indian subcontinent, but yes, they were against a few things that was very prominent in our Indian society, and one of those things was untouchability. So the novel starts with the early morning, where it is shown that Lakha, who was the head of the Bulasha's sweepers, was trying to wake up his son Baka. Now, the relationship between the father and the son is quite strained here, partly because of Baka's laziness as well, and also because of the Baka's obsession with the British. Here in the beginning of the play, we see the introduction of the the third character here, the person named Charat Singh. He was a very famous hockey player, and it was shown that he was also shouting at, and he was also yelling at Baka for neglecting his cleaning duties. But this person, Charat Singh, has a very changeable personality. Okay, he was a person who was, both soft and hard at the same time. So after yelling at Baka, he eventually realized that he was too harsh on him, and he asked Baka to do his duties, to complete his duties, and then meet him so that he can gift him a prized hockey stick. Here we see that Baka was very happy in the morning, because when he listens, when he comes to know that Charat Singh is going to offer him a hockey stick, he readily agrees and he is overjoyed. So Baka completes his morning shift work, and he returns home. After returning to home, he was very thirsty, only to find that there was no water at home. Alright. So his sister Sohini offers to bring water from the nearby well. Alright. So here we see that Sohini was very concerned of his brother, but again the social norms here, we'll see again that Sohini must wait behind several other outcasts also queued up to collect water. Here we see another character, a lady named Gulabo, who happens to be the mother of Ramcharan, and Ramcharan happens to be the friend of Baka here. But again, Gulabo and Ramcharan was little bit higher status than that means they were also like kind of social outcasts, but a little bit higher status than the Baka. All right. So she was a very jealous woman, and she didn't want. She was not very fond of Sohini, and even was about to hit her. So she was stopped by a temple pandit named Kalinath. Now, this is one of the major antagonists of the entire novel. Also, Gulabo is a can be considered as antagonist, but the intentions of Kalinath, the Pandit Kalinath, were very vicious in nature. We'll come to know about it shortly. Here, what Pandit Kalinath does is that he helps Sohini to get water, and he instructs her to come and clean the temple later in the day. Here, what happens is Sohini agrees to this and hurries home back with the water. In the other hand, what it is shown that Lakha is faking his illness just to avoid his work and so that he can push his son to do his work instead of him. So Baka is well aware of all these tactics that his father is using, but he is like a person who is very humble, as it was shown in the beginning of the novel, and he refuses to protest. So he takes up his cleaning supplies and goes into town. Now, what happens is that he does the work mostly away from the town, and this opportunity helps him to take the advantage of this situation by buying cigarettes and candies. Now, while Baka was having his candies, unfortunately, what happens is that he brushes himself with a higher caste person. Now, back then, it was a big crime if a lower caste person happens to touch a higher caste person in any way or the other. What happens is that a higher caste person makes a big fuss out of it, and his yelling attracts a lot of crowd. So we can see here that in this crowd, everybody was cursing Baka except for a traveling Muslim vendor who was traveling on his horse and buggy, who comes along and disperses the crowd. So before the person leaves, the high caste person, he slaps Baka for his impudence and scurries away. Now here what happens, we can see the arrogance, it's the arrogance of the higher society people. It's that like it's just a society norm that has put them in a higher pedestal, but they consider themselves as higher people, at higher person, and Baka, people who are untouchable, as the lower inferior beings. Okay, he actually slapped Baka before leaving. So here Baka was just left with his candies, and he was very much shocked and terrified at this incident, and he was crying. So after this incident was over, he just went to the temple. Now, after this horrifying incident, Baka went to the temple only to find that his sister was sexually assaulted by Pandit Kalinath. Now, I've told you about this person in the beginning of the novel, that he is one of the major antagonists of the show, of this entire novel, and he is one of the most vicious person in this novel. Uh, just imagine a person who is taking care of a temple and who happens to be the pandit and the priest, and is sexually assaulting a person because he has a leverage of being higher caste, and that person he is assaulting is of lower caste. A very disgusting thing to happen, and it was quite prominent back then. All right, so rather than accepting his mistake, what he was doing, he was accusing Sohini of polluting him. Again, the same thing that just happened back with Baka, now it is happening with his sister Sohini. So again, this entire commotion gathered a lot of people, and what Baka did is just pulled his sister away. Now, when his sister was moving away with his brother, she mentioned to Baka that this priest was trying to sexually assault her. So Baka, obviously as a brother, got furious and wanted to confront the priest. But what happened here is the exact opposite thing. The Sohini was actually embarrassed and ashamed, so she just forced her brother to come along. All right. Now, after these two sad incidents with him and his sister, he just wanders around and starts begging for his daily bread. So we can see the misfortune of the protagonist of the novel here, Baka, that after having such a strenuous day working as a sweeper, he has to beg for his meal. So this is really sad. So what happens is that after begging for some time, he was too tired and he just sleeps off in front of a house. Then what happens is that a sadhu shows up, and he was also begging, and he wakes up Baka, and eventually the owner of the house comes outside of the house and offers some meal to the sadhu. But when she sees Baka, she just get furious, because again Baka was untouchable, and the sadhu again was like to be considered a very pious person. So you can see the discrimination here. Both of them are beggars, but the discriminative behavior of the woman is quite clear because of the religious, the societal status the sadhu had. All right. So when she sees Baka, so she tries to bargain the meal that she is going to offer with the duties of Baka. She asked Baka to clean up her house and also the gutter. So he was very much humiliated. Baka was very much humiliated by the behavior and eventually leaves the place. And he moves to his house, which is in the outcast colony. Now we can see in the novel that the entire untouchable people lived together in a different place. Okay, they were not allowed anywhere near the high class people. So they have their own colony, and this entire colony is a outcast colony. Now, when he comes back to home, he happens to find his father and his sister there. His younger brother, Baka, has also moved out collecting food, basically begging for food or collecting the leftovers. All right. So, Baka here shares his horrifying incident with his father, and looking at the plight of his son, what does Lakha does? Lakha shares a story of a high caste doctor that once saved Baka's life. Now Baka is very much deeply moved by the story, but he is still upset. Alright. So soon after the story time, what happens is Raka comes back with food. So here Baka is like after having such a difficult time the entire day, he has to eat the leftovers. So he was again feeling very much sad about it and eventually leaves the place, citing out that his best friend's sister is going to get married and he is going to attend the wedding. Now at Ramcharan's house, we see a very interesting thing here. Baka has a other friend as well named as Chota, as I've mentioned in the beginning in the character list. Now here, these two friends of Baka, Ramcharan and Chota, who happens to be a little bit of higher status, societal status than Baka, happens to be very good friends of Baka. And when they saw Baka to be in a very sad state, they inquired about it and eventually found out that Baka had a horrible day. And when Baka said that the priest had sexually assaulted his sister, Chota was very much, infuriated. Okay, and he wanted to help Baka have his revenge. But you know what happens to the lower class people is that even the idea of the revenge is very costly for them. So Baka disagrees to this, and here we see that even though Ramcharan's mother Gulabo was very much reluctant to help Baka's family, as we have seen in the beginning of the novel. Ramcharan, on the other hand, and Chota, on the other hand, are very good friends of Baka. And in order to cheer Baka up, what they do is they remind Baka of a hockey game. All right. So this reminds Baka that he must go and get his gift from Charat Singh. Remember that in the beginning of the novel, I told you that Charat Singh was going to offer him a hockey stick because of his work. So that this is now the time when he remembers this and he goes to Charat Singh's place eventually to collect the hockey stick. Now when Baka goes to collect his gift from Charat Singh happens to show a lot of compassion to Baka, and he invites Baka to drink tea with him and allows the untouchable to handle his items. So here we see that Baka was like very much thrilled at the idea that Charat Singh was above the societal norms and he didn't disregard Baka because of his untouchable status. So he was very overjoyed and he collects his brand new hockey sticks and moves out. So Baka takes the entire frustration out by scoring a quick goal in the hockey game. So this actually doesn't goes well with him because the goalie of the opposite team is angry over Baka's success and he hits him. So this happens that both the teams starts fighting with each other, and in the entire process a player's younger brother gets hurt. So Baka actually picks up the young boy and takes him to his home, only to find out that his mother was blaming him of killing her son. So eventually, obviously, when you're trying to help someone and you get cursed and you get accused for killing him, this will obviously destroy his good mood. And when Baka returns home, he only finds his father shouting at him for being so late. Eventually what happens is that Lakha banishes Baka from home, saying his son must never return. So Baka runs away from his home and takes shelter under a tree. At the same time, what happens, a different character, a new character in the novel enters with the name Colonel Hutchinson. Okay, so obviously this person was a Britisher and he was actually a missionary, alright. And he encourages Baka to come along with him to the church. As you know that in case of Christianity, the concept of untouchability is not there and they consider all the Christians to be same. As for your general information, let me tell you that there are two sects of believers in Christianity. We already know about them. It's Protestants and Catholics. We'll not go into details in this segment. Let us come back to our novel again. So here, when Colonel Hutchinson takes Baka to the church, when they were about to enter, then there comes Hutchinson's wife. Already I've mentioned that the name of the Colonel Hutchinson's wife was Mary Hutchinson, and she is infuriated at the scene that her husband is bringing a Indian, black Indian, and that happens to be untouchable, to be more. So she screams, she begins to scream and shout, and this really depresses Baka, and he feels her anger actually very acutely and runs off again. So after departing from the company of Mr. Hutchinson, Baka runs towards town and ends up in a train station. Here he overhears few people discussing about the appearance of Mahatma Gandhi in Bulasha. So he eventually stays and tries to listen what Mahatma Gandhi has to say, and he finds out that Mahatma Gandhi was talking about untouchability and how it's a evil societal norm that he wants to abolish. Alright, so here is a pointer for you people that the contribution of B.R. Ambedkar is way ahead than Mahatma Gandhi in abolishing the untouchability from our country. Eventually, he ended up bringing up many laws in the constitution. As you know that B.R. Ambedkar is the father of the Indian constitution. So he had made some reforms, some remarkable reforms. But yes, the concept and the idea of this societal norm was there in the agenda of Mahatma Gandhi, and that's what he was trying to convey to the people. Alright, because we know that at that point of time Mahatma Gandhi had a huge influence over the Indian society. So whatever he said was taken very seriously. So when Mahatma Gandhi departed, a lot of educated Indian men started having discussion over the speech of Mahatma Gandhi. Here a lawyer named as Bashir was very critic about Gandhi's opinions and ideas. And another person, Iqbal Sharshar, defends Mahatma Gandhi passionately and convincingly. So all these discussions was going way ahead of Baka's head because he was not that educated. In fact, he was not educated at all. And all those vocabulary that they are using was way beyond his understanding. So at the end, he just understood one thing, that what Iqbal Sharshar was saying, that there was an imminent arrival of a flushing toilet in India, a machine that eradicates the need for humans to handle refuse. We know that Bakas and his entire family, his father as well, was were sweepers, and Baka in particular was responsible for cleaning the latrines. So when he heard about this machine could mean the end of untouchability. Why? Because he was considered as untouchable because he used to clean latrines, right? So if the human refuse gets flushed away by a new machine that we have as of now in our today's society, he understood that will eventually get rid of untouchability, that will eradicate untouchability. So with this piece of hope, Baka hurries home to share news of Mahatma Gandhi's speech with his father Lakha, and this is how the novel ends. So this is the video, guys. I have tried my best to explain this novel in a very easy manner so that you can take some pointers for your exams as well. And obviously, just knowing the plot summary or the character list or the background of the novel as well as the about the poet will not help you much in the exam until and unless you know the technicalities of this novel. Like in June term and examination 2020, the question that was asked from Untouchable, Mulk Ananad, was to discuss the narrative technique used by Mulk Ananad in Untouchable. So until and unless you know the technicalities that were used in the novel, it will be difficult for you to attempt all the questions. All right, so I will not say that knowing the summary will not help, of course. So when you will be discussing the narrative technique of Mulk Ananad, the summary overall will help you a lot in constructing your answer. So do try that thing as well, and when you prepare for the exam, ensure that you encompass everything. And I have uploaded the MEG 7 question paper of June term and examination in the playlist of June term and term and examination playlist that you will find in my channel. Do check that out as well, and if you have any other doubts regarding this session, do feel free to comment in the comment section. I'll definitely try to address it. Till then, God bless you and thank you all.